Hey, it's Drybear. Pax Dei has finally entered its early access stage. We've had multiple alphas and some tests that really went into testing the core gameplay, but they've gone into early access, which is a paid early access, the minimum price being $40 US in order to access the game as it stands right now, with some limitations built onto it and some future plans for the game as well. But let's talk about where the game sits, what people are saying, and where everything is right now. So when the game first launched in early access, available on Steam and playable if you buy the Founders Pack, the base Founders Pack for them, it started out as very negative. A lot of negativity around the initial launch of the game, and most of that, I would say a good 70-80% of that, has been around just performance, rubber banding, lag, launch, stuff like that. I give them a little bit of a pass there. Now, granted, they've done a lot of alpha tests and a lot of public tests, so hopefully they've done enough stress testing to get it there. But ultimately, once you put a lot of people into the first launch of an MMO, especially if it is the first title from a studio that's trying to do launcher and all of their operations and stuff internally, there's going to be a lot of issues. But I can say that I've been playing the early access all day today, and I actually have had almost no issues at all. In fact, the gameplay, combat, building, and overall connection quality has been better than any of the previous alpha tests that I've done for the game. But I think it is fair to say that this game currently is a early access alpha. It's still in a very early state. So it was like, I think in the high 30% for approval initially, and now it has moved over into mixed. So it's gone up to 49%. And if we check the overall progress of that going forward, we can see that there's actually, it seems to be going, there's a trend upward in the negative reviews and a trend upward in the positive reviews. As people try, and remember that everyone that plays this pretty much has to buy in to get it. There's been a good amount of refunds on that standpoint as well as people try to play through it. So let's look at some of the reviews as people get into it, because I think there's definitely a lot of very important notes being made. There are some minor gripes around the availability of options in the game, stats, things that you can change around, like reverse mouse, changing the aiming, some of the keybind rewind, stuff like that. And a lot of those are very, very honest and very straightforward. There's basically a good amount of people saying it's got a bright future, it has a good foundation. And once we get into my thoughts on the game, I would agree with that. I think the game has a good foundation, but as it stands right now, it definitely has a long way to go on what it needs to add. A ton of quality of life, but we'll save that for just a minute. The one thing I want to highlight as well is this review right here, which brought on, I think, a little bit of some awareness into the game. This is basically a joke review right here. This one is primarily just saying, hey, internal email confidentiality, team, listen up. We're going to download UE5, use some basic assets, slap together something and charge people for it, all of that. Now, what did happen from this is the developer responded. So someone from Mainframe, I'm not exactly sure who this, like what their job title is, but this is their edited version of that post or that review, and they just talk about how they hope people try the game out. It's still early, and he makes some she makes some very good points on that this is an alpha state, and the only way to really fully test and gather feedback for a sandbox crafting survival MMO like this is to go into a public testing phase like this. You're not going to be able to perfect it. You're not going to be able to get it. Getting feedback on that is very important. Now, should it be a $40 public test early access? That's another discussion topic separately, but I think this is the only way they're really going to get it. But this wasn't the original response, actually. So if you go down into the comments here, you can see that they actually had a separate response to this thread, which may have gotten removed, but it was basically very snarky, just kind of responding to this guy saying that this is just a joke and they've been working very hard on it. I think it is probably fair to say that Pax Dei has been in development for about 5 years, and they did get some, I don't know if it's angel investing, but they did get a large amount of investment to push the game itself. But it does seem like most of the devs are very passionate about it, and I would agree that it has a good baseline as well if you want to push into it. So despite what they were able to accomplish in alpha testing, the game is available for early access now. On top of this, they have their own launcher for Pax Dei, and they also have it on Steam as well. And from the Steam numbers, this is actually kind of promising. So 11,000 CCU for an MMO like this with paid access in an early state is actually far more than I would expect. I was actually expecting Pax Dei to be like 2,000 to 4,000 CCU active players. So getting over 10K at that is nice. They started out kind of about what I was expecting, and then they peaked peaked out at about 9K, broke 10K, and then when the morning came on the next day, they've been able to peak out here. So it is growing, it is getting better, and they are putting out patches to improve the performance. Now, keep in mind, I haven't had any performance issues, but I'm also someone who has an enthusiast level PC, so I wouldn't consider myself as part of the normal testing range for performance on PC, and haven't had next to no rubber banding. In some of the areas I've had rubber banding, so it's not like the most intense, but it is definitely there, and it seems like they're making more and more improvements as they go along. But the game itself, like the core is good, and let's get a little bit into like the actual gameplay itself. Like building and collecting and crafting, it has enough there that really makes you want to keep going. It does have like the Fallout plot system where you have to claim a plot, and unfortunately some of the like having more than one plot does require purchasing higher aspects, and they have mentioned that in the future they may want to have you purchase multiple plots. The cool part is you can actually join a clan, and as part of that clan you can actually connect your plots together and have this super massive plot. I have several neighbors on the early access that are connecting together to make these massive super construct facilities that have all of the extra pieces in there, which is super nice and pretty cool. And I think this game is probably better played in groups so that you can split up the tasks and the work. You can have people collecting materials. You know, I've had many runs where I have to go out and I have to get clay so I can build my kilns and furnaces, and I can build my foundations. Then I come back, then I have to go out and get wood so I can, you know, build all my pegs and planks and beams so I can put together the physical construction. Then I have to go out and I have to get iron so I can bring the iron back and I can smelt it into iron ingots and use it for the tools. Then I have to go, you know, it's like you have all these different pieces that go into it, and the crafting itself is pretty cool, and it's more of like a very basic leveling system. So as you start out, you have these recipes. It's kind of like old school World of Warcraft. You have these recipes that are a certain level requirement. Completing the recipes gives you XP and levels up that part of the game. And then as you unlock more and more, you start getting more resources. And it shares in the survival genre aspect in that you don't know any recipes until you discover items. So when you pick up an item for the first time, a consumable or a material, it will unlock all of the recipes related to that actual material. You can craft weapons and armor and gear and consumables. You can have food that gives you buffs, and they have mentioned that they do have PvE dungeons, though I haven't been able to do any. I focus more on the building and the actually early game aspect, because you can't really challenge any of the more difficult content until you've spent, you know, a good amount of time, several days at least, investing in your gear, getting your industry up, collecting materials, and putting those all to good use so you can actually get all that working. And I would say that they probably struggle most in the time department. Now, this is part of a general direction for the game, so this might be subjective on the player's part on whether they enjoy this or not, but time is a very big part of the experience of Pax Dei. It takes 1 full hour to process iron ingots. So you start it, you can walk away, you can log out, but it still takes a full hour. So what people do is they usually create a huge like line of furnaces constantly, you know, smelting out iron, and it's why it's good to have a big party of people working together. It takes 20 minutes to make charcoal. It can make 15 minutes to make rawhide. So you're putting these to work, and then you're going out and you're fighting and harvesting and coming back. But it takes a good amount of time to do all those, and you're kind of limited in the space that you have as well. So you're putting a lot of effort into slowly working up your tiers. You get better gear, you get better construction materials, you unlock all these new things. So if you like playing survival games and you like having that, I think they actually have a very good base for the survival game genre. You're constantly trying to put together all your new resources and create new things out of them, and it feels like there's always plenty of recipes that are ahead of you that you're working towards and trying to accomplish. Now, I think they suffer a lot from quality of life, and that's why I would say this is probably more alpha than anything else. And there's like a small list of things that I think every survival crafting game needs, and it's almost like heresy or sacrilege when they don't have it. The first one is craft from storage. I think in 2024, moving forward, every single survival crafting game needs to have craft from storage. it just needs to be there. Now, it doesn't mean the game can't be successful without it. V Rising doesn't have crafting from storage as of right now, even with their big 1.0 update. Some games just don't have it. But I think when you have it, it makes such a big difference. It really allows you to store things, organize things, and then be able to craft from the area, especially in a system that's based on plots, where you plot down and say, this is my spot. Not having crafting from storage is a big thing. I think there's also a lot of delay in some of the menus when you finish crafting, when you level up and get experience. Even in the combat, there's a little bit of a delay in feedback and hitting the target you're trying to hit, you taking damage, all of that. So I think there's like a lot of very needed polish, quality of life improvements, and experience improvements that the game desperately needs. So I've had a lot of people asking me today, is this game worth it? Is this something that I want to jump into? Is it worth the $40? And I would say if you're super into it, like if your excitement level is like between 7 to 10, then I think it's worth it. You'll get some good investment time, and you'll spend your evenings building up, getting better and better, and the game is just going to keep improving over time. But if your interest level is below a 7, I would say wait. Don't pick it up just yet. Give it time, let them cook, and just see what they do. Because going forward, there's also a lot of questions around the pricing. It's like $40 to $60 right now, depending on what package you want to pick up and what you get. I don't think there's a lot of really interesting items in the packages. You get special building materials and special recipes for like different awnings and things you can stick up off your building and stuff like that, but nothing that's like major. Additional plots is nice to make your plot area bigger, though you can build up and down to have multiple floors. So I think that is nice, but there's definitely a lot of work that needs to go into the game to make it ready for larger and larger player bases, and it's probably going to suffer a little bit from the New World problem in that it needs to have more content once you get through the bases there. So like maybe you spend a week building, you get through all the tiers, you get everything unlocked, and you're looking for dungeons, but there's not enough of them, or they're not interesting enough, or the polish level just kind of eats at you a little bit. So I think there's definitely going to be some time for them to work through those problems, make it better over time, and then eventually they're going to get to a point where it's there. But the foundation is great. The construction feels good. Gathering materials feels good. The world is vast and wide, and there's a lot of different places to go. And I think it's really fun and interesting from that perspective. They've got the survival part down. They have the sandbox part like at a decent level, and then the MMO part definitely needs a lot more work, but they're working on it, and this game is definitely one to keep your eye on if you're looking at it, especially when we have games like Once Human on the horizon in a couple weeks, which sits in that survival sandbox MMO style combat, but also has a lot of dungeons and boss fights that you'll find in the open world as well. So what do you think? Do you like Pax Dei? Do you not? Have you tried it yet, or have you been eyeing it? And what are your thoughts on the state and the launch of the early access? If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.